What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the rumors that went online just a few days before Christmas about God of War Remaster, God of War Remake. There's not too much to go off of, and the way it's presented is, well, kind of how you would expect it. So this actually comes from Nick Baker, a special Nick, and when it comes to him, he's definitely gotten some things right. I think a lot of people, including maybe even myself, we really, kind of get him on the stuff that he's gotten wrong, right? Sly Cooper, to me, right, talking about Sly Cooper for as long as he did. And it's a smaller game. It's a smaller fan base, I guess, all things considered. But he got me so freaking hyped. And for, obviously, to be confirmed by Sucker Punch and everybody that, it's not going to happen, that is disappointing. He also talked about Infamous, I guess, years back as well. So this is a guy that doesn't always get things right, okay? And that's very important to say. However, when it comes to God of War, I think this makes so much sense. And we'll talk actually about a few different reasons why. So what he says originally is that this is a remaster thing, right? That he hears that the God of War games are going to get a remaster on PlayStation. So the first three, right? They'd get basically a remastered collection. But then he starts to talk about, well, could this also maybe be a remake? Is there going to be more to it? So now, okay, well, now we're not so sure, right? Now it's a remaster or a remake. And I kind of just want to leave, again, because of the believability of him, I kind of want to just leave it there, right? So he says he's heard, right, that we might be, that's what he says, we might be getting the original God of War trilogy remastered on PlayStation. What I want to do for the rest of this video is talk about, does that make sense? And actually, ironically, why it does make sense. So I've actually said this for a while. In fact, I think around the time Ragnarok came out a year ago, I made a video talking about God of War 1, the first, the original, and saying I think it's only a matter of time until that gets a remake. I've also, I think, done this with like Batman Arkham Asylum. There's some games I just feel in my core are eventually going to come back. And I think like the Arkham games are going to one day, right, get remade and maybe put into a trilogy or whatever. And I honestly think God of War makes a lot of sense too. Now, God of War 3 really muddies things, right? Because that already got a remaster. It's on PS4. You can play it on PS5. So that one has actually, transcended, right? Like that's made it across multiple generations, more than any of the other games, right? You have the God of War collection, I believe, right on PS3 that has, I think, the first two. There's also the PSP ones that they have the collection as well. So they are, honestly, they are scattered, okay? They're definitely scattered. They remind me actually of like a worse put together, not in quality, but of like Infamous. Infamous is also scattered, right? You have Infamous 1, 2, and Festival of Blood, and those are kind of combined, but then you got Second Son and First Light that kind of, those really, mess things up. So for God of War, I actually think it's almost worse. You got the PSP ones, and you got, the original two, but then you also got, God of War 3, which is kind of different. So I do think it makes sense to one day, and hopefully one day soon, put all of these games together in one package deal. I think it kind of needs that. Do it even like, Kingdom Hearts has never been shamed, in terms of doing. I actually really like how Kingdom Hearts does it. At least they keep their games around, right? There's 5,000 Kingdom Hearts games. They try to put them in these collections every so often just to make sure they're all kind of there for you, right? If you want to go through them. And as much as people, I love Kingdom Hearts, is one of my favorite franchises ever. As much as people go after it, I actually think it's a pretty good practice. So for God of War, I hope to see it. Now, remaster or remake, that also muddies the water, right? Because it's like, it's almost a Mass Effect like thing, right? When they did the Legendary Edition and Mass Effect 1, it wasn't a full-on remake, but it was definitely more remade than remastered, right? But then 2 and 3, they didn't really touch all that much. They did, obviously, right? But not nearly as much as 1. I could see that for God of War. God of War 3, I think still, in fact, I played God of War 3 maybe like a year and a half ago, still holds up. Really, and it's been remastered, right? So to remake God of War 3, to me, at least right now, maybe in 10 years from now, but right now doesn't make sense. God of War 1 and 2, yeah. God of War 1 specifically, I would say. God of War 2, yeah, you know what? Both of them I would say are pretty close. So if you're going to do something like a collection, I think remaking those two makes more sense. But, that's tough because the people that are into God of War now, I actually wonder, right? Because there's always like that divided fan base thing. I've said God of War 3 is my favorite one. It still is for many, many reasons, okay? I love God of War 2018. I love Ragnarok, and Valhalla's DLC is freaking awesome, okay? But the people that are, the 10, 15 million, units that these games are selling, which is insane, are they into, the old style of God of War? I am, but I don't know how many others are, right? So if you remade those games, in my opinion, you can't change them. You can't change them into being the way that these games are right now. It just wouldn't work, and that's not really remaking it, right? So, bringing it up to current standards, but keeping, at its core what those games are, would that even work, right? And then you have to, I guess, debate remake takes way more time, way more, I guess, effort in terms of like, money and resources and all that stuff versus a remaster. If you did a remastered trilogy, the third one already was remastered. That I don't want to put like years on it, right? Or how much work it would take. I ultimately don't know because I don't work there, right? But I would imagine God of War 3 would not be hard at all to remaster, considering most of it's already done, right? 1 and 2 would be like the bulk of it, but I think it makes sense. And then to throw in one final thing, we've talked about this before. There definitely seems to be a push from PlayStation, some of it has been rumors, but some of it has also been their own developers, and we've talked about this like in their own like channel trailer or, developer trailer. They want to do, and they are doing remasters. So I do think over the next few years, and I don't even know if maybe Nick Baker himself has said it, there has been this push, I think, from behind the scenes to do it. I think it makes sense. I mean, if you could over the next few years, and this could be the strategy, right? You have these big games that cost so much money, but we know due to these hacks or leaks or whatever, I mean, remastered games or remastered trilogies or whatever, they take less time, they take less money, more importantly, and they sell pretty darn well. So if over the next 2-3 years, while you're waiting for the next big this game or that game, if you could have some of these, and you can even delve back, we've talked about Infamous and Resistance and Sly Cooper and games like that. These would not be all that time consuming and all that much money to bring them. And yes, you'd want them to sell, but you don't have to sell all that much. You're not asking a remastered trilogy to sell 5-10 million units, right? To like break even. You need it to sell maybe like 500,000 or to make some money. I think that sounds perfect, honestly. And you, in terms of game preservation, you keep those games alive. That's the biggest thing for me. Keep these games alive. And the biggest way you do it now, sadly, maybe, is remastering them, right? Putting them together. And maybe that's not the greatest practice of all time, but to keep them alive, it's the best thing we have. So, yeah, remaster God of War, as we talked about in the past, remaster Infamous and Sly and all these games. God of War easily makes the most sense, though, right? I could keep petitioning for Sly till the day I die, but for God of War, these games are selling so well. It's still a big franchise. It's not gone. Infamous, Sly, Resistance, these are all games that are dead, right? Even though I don't want them to be, they are. Whereas God of War is still happening. So God of War, I do think, would take priority. I think that makes sense. I can complain all I want, but it absolutely makes sense. So I think it can happen. Is it going to happen next year? I don't know. I mean, to fill in a year, right? I mean, you could do it. So it depends on how far, along they are and how many different developers kind of PlayStation has in the background that are working on these things. But I absolutely think it makes sense. And like I said, I would prefer 1 and 2 to be remade. But a remaster, again, it would take less time. To be honest with you, I would still buy it. If it was a remaster of all 3 games, I'd buy that, especially if they do like a reduced kind of, if it's like a $50, $60 thing instead of $70, which it very well could be, right? I mean, that's just my speculation, but I just imagine, you wouldn't maybe charge the same price. We'll see. But ultimately, I think it's a good move. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.